released. I noticed I have it wasn't live. Hey everybody. Welcome to the live stream. I'm going to wait for the people to come to the chat. Yeah. While we're waiting, uh I want to say obviously this is tentative title Tuesdays. You can see it in the graphic. It's right there. There's nothing else on the screen. And this is a I guess companion piece or a supplemental material to a podcast that I release every Monday, or at least I was releasing it every Monday because that was my schedule. I decided I should release a podcast every week, and so every Monday I released a podcast, and I did that uh, for up to I released the 100th episode, and then I decided that I was kind of running out of steam. It was getting tougher and tougher to find topics uh, to talk about, and so I decided I was like, I really need to change my focus. I need to pivot to uh, to like trying to make things and to get more experiences uh than making a podcast, because I was just running out of things to talk about, and there didn't seem to be a lot to talk about in terms of what was being released, or at least things that I had seen. So I was like, I made it to 100. I'm gonna count that as a win, because like it was tough to get to 10 episodes, and then it was kind of tough to get to 20 and to 30, and then you know I was like, I've never produced so much content, and I was like, 100 is a good round number. um let's just It's done. Like, I did 100 episodes. I'm gonna count that as a win, and even if I decide never to come back to doing this podcast, at least I can look back and say, you know what, I did that. I consistently released 100 episodes, and I did that. So yay me, so to speak. Um, I'm not gonna say that every episode was like this grand revelation or what, but I at least tried to come up with something interesting to say every episode, and whether or not I actually accomplished that, I guess it depends on the audience. Whoever was listening to it, if it inspired them, if it gave them some insight, I'm great. That's great. so uh with that, yeah, I wanted to talk about a couple things on this stream in particular. So, I didn't want to get into the shows quite yet, but I did want to talk about uh, an issue that I talked about on the recent episode that I released of. So, if you don't know, I release a podcast called Tentative Title with Tim, and Tentative Title Tuesday is the companion piece, or the supplement to that podcast. So I was talking about the intuitive filmmaker, and uh, the reason why I wanted to talk about that is because just recently I've been just inspired to pick up the camera and just shoot short films and shoot scenes, and just I was just tired of sitting around. I was tired of waiting for people. I was tired of just all of it. And so one day, I just picked up the camera and I said, you know what? Even if I film something and it sucks, at least I took steps to I guess further my craft, further my understanding of how to make a film, how to put something together. And so I did. I grabbed the camera and I started filming something. I had this scene in mind about, and it was based off of what I do mostly on a daily basis, which is, I go on a walk. There's a park near my house. I go and I walk, and it used to be, I got into a rhythm where I was increasing my mileage by half a mile every month. And so I started in April, and by the time it got to November, I was up to like 4 miles or something like that. Like I was just, I'd never walked so much, and it felt really good. But then the weather got really cold, and my motivation got really low, and I stopped doing that over the Christmas break, over Thanksgiving, and then I wasn't doing it for a while, and then I got back into it. But this time I decided to just not put as much pressure on myself, and so I was like, you know what, it's okay if I miss, like I wasn't walking, um I wasn't walking every day. I was walking during the week, and then I would take the weekend off to recover, and then I'd get back into it on Monday. And it was a really good routine. Like I felt great. I felt like I was being healthy, like just all of the benefits that come with just moving your body and being active, and it was great. Uh, but for this year, I wasn't really doing that. I thought, I'm gonna get out there eventually, when the weather gets warmer, and then I started to do that again. But I was like, I wanted, my plan was to walk, and then to get up to running, because I mean that was my goal in the first place, is that I wanted to run like not even like a 5K, just something. I just wanted to be able to run like some kind of marathon, something small, like just a small fraction of an accomplishment. I was like, I know I can do it. Like this is kind of the training, and the training started with just the small incremental steps. And like I said, I was getting up to 4 miles of walking, and I was like, that's great, but I'm not actually. I'm using the excuse of not running, and I'm like, well, that's not what I was trying to do. The goal was to get to actually running a full mile, running 2 miles, 3 miles, 4 miles. But I wasn't doing that. I was only just walking. So yeah, that goal, if you can call it, like, was kind of. I mean, it's still out there. I still might accomplish that, but I haven't gotten there yet, and I still need a lot of training, lot more like motivation and focus. But once again, it's one of those small wins that I can say, well, I did that for a while. But it's not the full goal. I might get to it somewhere. Anyway, long story short, too late. I've already been talking about this whole process. So when I would, get ready to go on these walks, I thought about how just the process of getting ready, the process of putting on my jogging clothes and putting on my shoes, like there's something there's a small scene there. There's something that I can do with this. And I started to have images in my head of, okay, there's going to be a wide shot of, like, this character getting ready, And I was like, you know what? Just one day, I got so frustrated. I grabbed the camera and I'm like, I'm just gonna shoot this thing. It may be a load of crap. I don't care. I'm just gonna do it. So I did. I grabbed the camera and I put it on myself, and I you know I did a master, and then from there I started to um think of different shots that I wanted to see in the sequence. So I moved the camera and I was like, all right, I want to get a close up of the shoes. I want to get a close up of uh you know of me, like doing this or that, or or the other thing, just trying to maintain the blocking of what I did in the wide shot. And that ended up growing to, you know, this scene where, this guy, we don't know what his name is, we don't know what his situation is, but he gets ready for a run, and he goes out for a run. And granted, I wasn't able to film myself running, but I was I used the device of a cutaway to to show that this guy went on a run and then he comes back. Like it was, I filmed outside the house, so I would run down this path, and then I would cut away to something, to like the trees, and then I'd cut back to me running back towards the house. And that was and then I would walk into the door, and there was this like, I got this sudden inspiration that maybe this guy did something. Maybe he was out to, uh, hurt somebody or not, or maybe he came to like some revelation. I made it very ambiguous, and so I shot the entire thing, and I cut it together, and I put it out there, and it got the most views that I've ever had on anything, any of the YouTube videos I've ever released. I was just like, wow, I can't believe that this really captured the imagination of the people who watched it. And I was like, wow, one, I didn't have a script, I didn't have storyboards, I didn't have a shot list, I didn't even have I didn't even have a story. Yet I produced this short film out of thin air. And it got me thinking. I was like, well, what other scenes can I put together? And I started to do a series of just short films. I guess you could call them sketches or scenes, but I like to call them short films because I tried to make sure that there was some kind of arc involved, and just not using uh much of anything. Like I wouldn't script it. I used my kids for a couple of scenes, but for the most part I would just go out there and just say, I'm gonna grab the camera, I'm gonna come up with a scenario, and I'm just gonna film it, and I'm going to film it like I'm filming an actual, like as if this was a scripted film, and I'm just gonna see what happens. And not all of them have been great, but most of them I think have, there's been an arc, or there's been something where the audience sees the dilemma or the conflict. And I mean, it's been a lot of fun because the pressure is so low on just producing anything. And I was like, you know what? I've been waiting for, so, okay. I'm going to step back a bit. If you don't know me, if you don't know my work, I am a writer, director, and also part-time cinematographer. Sometimes I work, like as a cameraman on various projects. But uh, I wrote a film called "Look Into the Fire," and it had been the to date and even now the biggest project I've ever taken on. Like I wrote and directed it, and just it just took so much out of me. I mean, it was great, and I was so excited to be able to take the script that I'd written that was kind of like a I was just throwing, like, not throwing stuff to the wall, but it's like I was very proud of the script, and I thought, there's no way that the script is gonna get made. It's gonna be years. Like I'm gonna have to go into the studio system. I'm gonna have to like pay my dues. I'm gonna have to do all this stuff before anybody will allow me to make this film. And that was not the case. And I got in touch with uh, 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 an actress who I'd met on another set, and she really loved the script, and we hit the ground running, and we made this thing happen, and I'm so proud of it. It's the biggest accomplishment in my professional career, and I'm just like that. But that was a lot, and it took, like, going through post. There were so many setbacks. There was so much of a frustration with the process that I was like, oh my gosh, like this is just like, I'm so proud of this film. I'm so proud that I got it done, but oh my gosh, there's just so much involved with it that, when I wanted to jump into doing another feature film, which I still do. I still have another feature film on the horizon that I'm trying to get off the ground. Uh, it it turned into another waiting game. It turned into like how I'm gonna get this done. And so I ended up just spending a lot of time just writing, and even that I was just like, yeah, well, just because you wrote a script doesn't mean that like anything's gonna happen with it. Like it's still just text on a page, and who knows if it's ever gonna go anywhere. And I was just like, well, am I just gonna wait? Am I just going to just have this script sitting around, and I did start to do some pre-production on it, and trying to get it going, but a film takes a long time to get going sometimes, and it takes a lot of money, it takes a lot of resources, and I was like, well, like it just takes so much, and I was like, I don't know if I know I can step back onto a big set, and be able to handle myself, but in terms of like spending another couple of years trying to finish the thing, I'm like, well, that's not very like, I already went through that's not very encouraging. Like I don't like that at all. And so like I was like, maybe the frustration of like the long process of making a film, I think drove me to the point where I wanted to just film anything and put together these small scenes, because at least it's something that I can do quickly, and I can release it, and I can get feedback, and I can get people, seeing that I do know what I'm doing. And not to say that they're not going to look at my feature film and say, well, he doesn't know what he's doing, but like this business is so much about, well, what's the new thing, what do you have next, and I was like, all I got is this thing that I've been working on for 5 years, and well, it's out in the world, it's new to the world, but like it's always about what's the next thing. And since it seemed like the next thing was going to take a little while before I could, do anything with it, or like I haven't even gone into production with it. So I'm just kind of sitting here like, I need to I need to work on something small to feel like I'm actually working my craft. And so yeah, that frustration led me to doing these smaller projects. And I think it's actually been a great just a great thing in general, just to do these smaller projects. Um, you know, find ways to do these smaller films, and at least it's something that if I'm gonna encourage you to do the same thing. If you're not already just going out there and just shooting small scenes, small projects, small films, because I mean, heck, even short films, like some people are raising like $10,000 for a short film. I'm like, oh my gosh, really? I mean, sure, it will give you a higher production value, but it's like a short film, like, might get it might have a shelf life. It might get you in the door um to do a feature film, but that's a lot of money for an independent like film to spend, and it may just get lost in the ether. Maybe you'll take it to some festivals and it'll get some awards, but like, I to kind of go off on a small tangent. Like, I have a love hate relationship with festivals. Like, I understand why they exist, but I also am very frustrated by them, and that's probably because I haven't like I've only gotten into like one festival. But it just so much of it seems like people are making films for other filmmakers and not making films because they want to make something that like it doesn't have to be the general masses, but it's just like you're just making a film to be appreciated for a very short amount of time, and to kind of get lost, and to basically have other filmmakers pat you on the back. Which, to be fair, it feels great when other filmmakers look at your film and say that was great, I love it. I mean, it's an ego boost in so many ways, and I totally get it. Um, but I that's why I have a love hate relationship with festivals in general, because like I want to make those films that appeal to a broader audience, and will kind of like will have a shelf life that is far that reaches far longer than just some film that I made for that they got into a festival. It's like, yeah, you can have all these laurels around it and it looks really really important, but I mean, come on. It's like, I don't know. I'm still that's something that I need to work through. That's something that I need to deal with, because I understand it's important. It's a way in which you can get your film in front of people who are going to be able to release it in other like they'll take it, or they'll at least give you a job to do something else. I get it. I get it. It's just it's so frustrating because I'm like, no, no, no. I just want to make films that interest me. I don't want to have to go through this whole pageantry of a festival. I just I don't care that much about it. It's kind of like that old Groucho Marx line. It's like, I don't want to be part of an organization that would have me as a member. Um, I feel that way constantly. I'm like, you know what? I think I'm comfortable standing outside of this whole other ecosystem, because of the fact that I'm like, have seen some films that are considered to be important, and I'm like, that was okay, sure, yeah, why not? All right, it. I'm not saying these films did not need to exist. I think they do. I think films about all kinds of subjects need to exist, but I'm like, I don't want to make films that cater to a festival, or to you know that I don't want to make them just because I'm trying to impress other filmmakers, but that's I want it to be a byproduct of just putting together a very competent, interesting, well-made film. That is the goal. And if I guess it's because like with festivals, I've tried to get into festivals, or I've thought about submitting to a festival, And then I look at the criteria and I'm just like, yeah, I do not fit any of the criteria. Or it's one of those things where I'm like, I go down the list, I'm like, okay, check, 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 check. Okay, I got all those. And then it's the last thing on the list, or the last the last part of the list where I'm just like, well, I guess that's not happening because I do not qualify for this festival. So yeah, I guess I'm not submitting to this one. So and that's been my frustration just with not just festivals, but just submitting to anything that is like considered to be industry an industry thing. Fill in the blank. I don't I'm not I it's like I said, it's a place where I don't think I'm wanted. I It's a place where I kind of have to prove myself outside of the system, so that the system will say to me, I really loved what you did. Here, like, come on in. We're gonna accept you as an exception to this, to the rules that we've set up. And I know that that's a very uh delusional, I guess you could say, opinion, because there are plenty of festivals out there that will, if a film is good, they'll accept it. Um, Sometimes it has to do with like my timing, like when I finally get around to thinking, you know what, let's try this whole festival thing again, and I'll start looking at the different festivals, and then I'm like, well, that the early bird is off the table, and now it's the late entry, and that's really expensive. Maybe not. Maybe I'm not gonna submit this year, which ends up being the case. Where I always miss deadlines. I always uh you know get some kind of like encouragement to submit to a film festival when it's too late, and then I'm like, well, I'll just submit next year. But then I always forget, or I never put it on the calendar. So anyway, all right, I've been talking for a good half hour just about my own stuff. So yeah, uh, I wanted to talk about the Ahsoka finale, which is going to be airing tonight, and uh, I'm excited and not at the same time, and I'll tell you why. The reason why that I'm excited about the Ahsoka finale is because then I can finally say I've watched all of Ahsoka. I started on week 1, and I almost stopped watching on week 3, and then I was watching some other YouTuber, and they were talking about what happens, and I was like, okay, fine, I'll give it one. I'll watch this episode and see how it goes. And then it was better. Like, I'm gonna say that I have no idea the relationships between Ahsoka and Sabine and Ezra and even Thrawn. I have no idea. Um, but I'm aware of those characters. I've watched some of the Clone Wars, so I know at least who Ahsoka is. Um, I've played the online. It's like the Galaxy of Heroes. I think it's officially called the Star Wars one, and so I'm aware of who these characters are, but I don't know their arcs, their story arcs. I have no idea like what they want, what their powers are. So I don't know. I know about Thrawn. I got the like Heir to the Empire trilogy, which I don't recall actually reading, but I should, because I hear that trilogy is freaking phenomenal. And at the time that I bought that trilogy, I was like really invested in Star Wars and really trying to find just everything I could, and buy like all the novels that I could that involve Star Wars. And so but I was also a terrible reader. So I would collect these books, but there were only a few of them that I actually got through. And hey, Spooky Green, hello, hello, how's it going? Um, so I would just I was aware of who these characters were. I didn't know what their powers were, what their motivations were. I had no idea about any of that. So coming into Ahsoka, I was like, well, let's just see what happens. And I was, for one, the episode seemed very stupid in terms of the way in which they plotted out their episodes. They seemed very slow, and also just the logic of the characters seemed very flawed. And I was like, why are they doing this? And just everything seemed all over the place. And I was like, why am I wasting my time watching this show? And in the middle, like towards the middle of the run, there's some revelations, and I was like, okay, this is starting to get interesting. This, I'm kind of following what's happening, but still, like, there's a lot of the characters are making a lot of dumb choices. There's a lot of useless scenes. There's a lot of just like plot armor applied to all of the characters, and I'm just like, this is just stupid. Like, why? Just like, who, come on, Filoni. Why are you not putting your characters in more of a dangerous situation? Why are you not using every opportunity to have the characters like get very very not compassionate, but combative, um challenging each other, just if one character says we should do this, why is there not another character pushing back against that? Like it wasn't until like the last episode where like the robot is the one who's like looking over at Ahsoka and being like, hey, this doesn't make any sense. Like, how is this gonna work out? And Ahsoka's like, I don't know. It's gonna happen because the Force and all that. Yo, dude. And I was just like, yeah, but like, finally, there's a character who's pushing back against the logic of another character. Um, and so it was really frustrating. And I'm probably going to watch the finale when it goes live tonight. But I'm like, I know it's basically gonna be that Thrawn is either gonna make it out of the this alternate galaxy or what. Like, or here's um my grand theory is that either he makes it out and leaves, leaves I forgot his name, but he's played by Reese Stevenson, like, gonna leave them there possibly, and then like Ezra and Ahsoka will like find a way to get on the ship and make it back to the real galaxy, or the other galaxy, or they all get stuck there for some reason. And like, obviously they're setting up for a season 2, and that's the frustrating thing about these shows, is that they're always kicking the can down the road. So they're like, yeah, we're gonna have this arc, but this arc is actually like, it's just a bunch of Easter eggs that's gonna lead to something down the road that we're really gonna pay off. And I'm like, no, that is stupid. Like, writing, that is stupid production. Who greenlit this piece of crap? Because they've done it in every show, and they're like, we're gonna make it connected and intricate, and it's like, I don't care. I just want an arc. I just want to watch a season of something that's Star Wars, that by the time we get to the end, I feel like I went on a journey. I feel like we got some revelations and conclusions, but there's still more story to tell. Like, I'm gonna bring up the example of like Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul. It's like every season there was an arc, and but by the time you got to the end of the season, you knew that there was more story to tell, but you went through the arc of the season dealing with one particular problem, or just like there was a gradual progression of characters understanding and growing, or falling into something that, by the time you got to the end, you were like, oh no, I need to watch the next season because I want to see what happens with this character, because they did a good job of the arc of that character in the season. And with Ahsoka, there's no arc. Nothing is happening. It's all kind of like, well, they're gonna go over here, and then they're gonna go over here, and then they're gonna stand and stare at this thing, and then they're gonna stand and stare at this thing. And from what I hear, and I believe it, it was supposed, like, I don't know who decided that this was a good idea, but it's supposed to be like Rebels season 5 or something, and I'm like, well, that's just a bunch of nonsense, cuz like, you if nobody has seen any of the other cartoons and don't intend on seeing the cartoons, you kind of need to get people up to speed. And maybe it's their like grand plan where they're like, "Oh yeah, we're going to make things so confusing that people get so frustrated that they'll have to go back and watch all this stuff." And I'm like, "You know what? No. No, that's absolute nonsense. Like, I don't believe that that's going to get people excited about, um you know going into a season 2 if they have a season 2. Like, I don't think it's like the best plan, because of the fact that, like, if people are confused, they're going to get frustrated and they're going to tune out, and they're going to, like, the some people may not even get to like the to season, like, they're not even going to get to the season finale because they might have checked out by now, because it was so confusing and frustrating, and they don't even tell you like what the characters are trying to do. Like, the arc of the entire season was find Ezra and stop Thrawn. It's like, okay, well, one, if people have no idea who Ezra is, why do I care? Like, why is he important? What, like, show us something. Like, have some kind of like, uh you know the, previously on, or whatever, happening at the first episode, so that we know why why Ezra is important. And then Thrawn, it's like, why is Thrawn this big threat? It's like, those are very important questions that need to be answered at the beginning, so that as the episodes go along, we realize how much of a threat Thrawn is, and we realize how essential it is to get Ezra back, and we understand why it's essential to Sabine and to Ahsoka, to get Ezra back. But we don't get any of that. We get nothing. And usually I'm all about this kind of storytelling. Usually I'm like, yeah, cool. That would be, like, being dropped in and have no idea like what the heck is going on. Like, I'm like, oh, okay, you're there. It's challenging storytelling. That's fine. But I'm just like, what the heck? Like, what? Why? Why are we, um, having to like fill in all these blanks when it should kind of be laid out that this is what is important to the story that they're telling. And I think that's what it comes down to. It's like, we need to know what's important to understand what's happening in the season we're about to watch, and to go on that journey and to appreciate like why the plot is happening the way it's happening. So it's like, yeah, it's frustrating. Like I said, I'm probably gonna watch the Ahsoka finale because I've come this far and I want to know what's happening, but I don't expect to get any answers, and I fully expect that they're gonna be like, "Hey, there's a season 2 happening. Come on over and you may get some answers." And it's like, man, no, I don't think so. No, no. So, anyway, like, yeah, it's really, it's a really frustrating show, and I know that they could do better. I know that they know how to tell the story, but they're just being very lazy, and I don't exactly know why. I don't know why they're being so lazy. Like, is it just their production schedule is so tight that they are only able to write first draft scripts? Like, or maybe they write the first draft scripts and they're like, we're brilliant. We wrote a script. We wrote a season of television for Disney Plus, and we're gonna go into production because we're so brilliant. And it's like, I don't know. I don't know. It hasn't been impressive for most of the Star Wars properties that have been turned into television. And I kind of have a theory about this that like um that Star Wars has always been a movie property. It's always been it's always worked best as a film. And I'll even include like the sequel trilogy, even though I don't think that they were done particularly well. But in terms of like the original trilogy and the prequels, like it just there seemed to be a grander scale to it all. And then when you bring it down into television, it diminishes that scale, it diminishes uh that spectacle. And also because of the fact that they're shooting in like the volume, they're shooting on smaller sets, it just everything seems smaller. And it doesn't lend itself to the grand opera of Star Wars, and that sucks because like Star Wars is a big thing, and I know I might get some hate for this, but I think Star Trek, on the other hand, probably just needed to stay as a television show. Now, it's not to say that like Wrath of Khan wasn't a brilliant film and script. Like it was. Like there have been some good Star Trek movies. I have to admit, but I'm like, Star Trek was made for television. Star Wars was made for film, and trying to jump over to another format maybe is not what is needed for for that story. And I don't like saying that because I think Star Wars can work in this episodic format. It's just that they don't know how to write for it. They don't know how to have an arc over like with Ahsoka. It's only 8 episodes, and I'm like, okay, fine. Then you have way less time to tell this story, and why are you wasting it on plot points and scenes that don't drive that plot forward, that don't drive you dramatically towards a conclusion for the season? It's stupid. I don't get it. And that's why I think that it's a bunch of scenes thrown together just to get you to season 2 or to the next thing. Like it's just filler. It's just to kind of be like, well, like um the I keep saying theory. Like I have a lot of theories. I think a lot about these things. Uh but like Star Wars had a timeline, and there was the Skywalker timeline. There's the prequels, and then there's the original trilogy, and then there's the sequel trilogy. It's like, okay, well that arcs a certain amount of time, and then I think they're just trying to fill in all the gaps because they think that people want to know what happened in between these films or that trilogy or whatever. And so they're just trying to fill in all of these different holes that they see in the timeline. But I don't like it doesn't matter to me. I don't really care, but it does kind of like jumble up the continuity. It jumbles up like why was Ahsoka not in any of the trilogy films? Where was she during the original trilogy? It's like these are questions that now the fans have because you've decided to make a show in which she's still alive in taking place after Return of the Jedi. It's like, okay, well then, where was she during this entire time? Because we don't see her. She wasn't actually invented until way after. So what was she doing? And that's why I think that these characters are gonna be stuck in the world between worlds, because that's the only way that they're gonna be able to explain why these characters were not around during some of the films. And yeah, just I don't know. I'm frustrated about it, but uh, I keep giving it a chance, and I keep getting burned, and it's very. I don't know. I want to love Star Wars. Like, out of the two franchises, like, I was a Star Wars kid. I grew up with Star Wars. I wanted to have a lightsaber. I wanted to, go on adventures with Luke Skywalker and Han Solo and Princess Leia. I like that captivated my imagination, like, since I was a kid. And now it seems pedestrian. It seems like matter of fact. It doesn't seem special. It just seems like just content, and yeah, it's just, like I said, frustrating. So, are you planning on seeing it? Have you been watching it? Let me know in the chat, or send me an email to tentative.title.with.tim.podcast@gmail.com. Yes, I know that email is it's stupidly long. I tried to get a shorter one, and I was just running into so many problems because other people had that email. So there it is. I can't. It now exists. It is what it is. So anyway, all right. Let me get a drink of water. Okay. All right. So I'm gonna move to a slightly better show called Only Murders in the Building. Now, this show has been, well, I don't want to say it's hit or miss, but it's very interesting because, well, it's a murder mystery. And, the first season was very, I don't want to say it was very simple, but it, presented these characters played by Steve Martin Short, and Selena Gomez. And a murder happens in their building, and they come together and they start a podcast about murder, where they're trying to solve the murder. Very straightforward. I mean, there's twists and turns and revelations, and I really thought, like, it was so good. I loved it. Second season, they expanded upon that idea, because it seems to be at the end of every season there's a murder that leads you into the next season, where they have to figure out, well, what happened to. So we solved this murder, but now we have this new one, and okay, who did this? What's their motive? Why did this happen? And so the second season, even though it expanded upon the characters, and they were investigating another murder, it in my opinion, it meandered a bit, but still, there was still a pretty big payoff at the end, which I appreciated. But I was like, well, it wasn't as strong as the first season, but it still paid off, and so I appreciate that. And so I was like, okay, I'm watching it because I do love to find out, like, why and how this murder happened. Uh, and I love to watch Martin Short and Steve Martin to, like, playing off each other, and Selena Gomez being in the middle of all that. So and there's, like, side characters that are really funny and interesting as well. But in this one, they took the gang, kind of, the murder still happens in the building, but the first murder that we or the attempted murder happens at in a theater, where Martin Short's character uh, is the director of this play, and the star comes out on stage and he starts gurgling up blood and he collapses, and that's the cliffhanger at the end of season 2. And then when we come into season 3, we're like, oh no, he's dead. Okay, they're gonna go into an investigation mode, and all of a sudden, this character comes back to life. He just like all of a sudden they have this like cast party, and they're like, oh no, they're like, we're still having the cast party, but it's a somber one because we lost our lead, and oh no. And then all of a sudden he comes walking in the door and he's like, hey everybody, what's going on? And they're like, what is happening? And then so there's kind of this fake out where you think, okay, well then why did he collapse on stage? What happened with that? And then he actually does get killed in the building. And so that kind of sets off the um you know in a way trying to figure out like what happened. But then there's this separate story where you know Steve Martin and Martin Short are trying to put on, they're trying to pivot and still have the show, the still put on the show, because well, Martin Short's career is on the line, his character is on the line. And so they're trying to, they're trying to revamp it. It was a play at the beginning, and now they revamp it as a musical, and trying to go back into rehearsals and all this kind of stuff. And the group kind of gets split up a bit, where they're Selena Gomez kind of goes off on her tangent, and even though Steve Martin and Martin Short are working together on this musical, they're still off on their own kind of tangents. And so it ends up being kind of fragmented for a lot of this season. It gets, it takes a while for them to finally come together and say, we're going to restart the podcast. And there are other side characters who come in and become a part of that process, and they're a bit like, they're still suspects, but they're, so it becomes a bit more intricate. And I've heard the show, the season, like, the first couple seasons, these characters didn't have jobs, and so their only job was making this podcast. And then in the third season, everybody has a job for the most part, and so they're preoccupied, and they've changed the location because it's no longer in the building. They spend most of their time at this theater, or in Martin Short's apartment, where they're rehearsing the show, or they're out and about in New York City. So so yeah, it finally watching, like, I watched the finale on Monday. I usually watch it on Wednesday mornings, but I was so excited to see the finale that I was like, okay, once it's live, I'm gonna watch this. And I was like, I watched it, and um I want to say that the penultimate episode kind of gave away like who did it. And then um and then like, I'm trying not to spoil this season if you haven't seen it, or if you haven't seen the show at all. But the person who is suspected of the first attempted murder is connected to the person who actually does the murder. And so it wasn't really a surprise. Like, there wasn't this grand revelation, and it was kind of weird, because like, as much as the final episode was really good, and there was, you finally get to see this play, this musical that they've been working on, and you get to see everybody in costumes, and you get to see the set, and you get to see some of the numbers. It's like, okay, finally, we're, the payoff of what everybody in the show, in who, like, what they've been rehearsing, we finally get to see the results of all that effort. um But then when it came to like the revelation of like, well, who did it? It was like, that's it. I could have. I mean, I could have told you that like a week ago. Like it's kind of. I mean, not that I was like dead sure about it, but I was like, yeah, it ended up being that we were a little like I was a little bit ahead of what was going on, and so I was like, oh come on, it can't be just that. Like I really was expecting that there was going to be this twist upon the twist. It's like, okay, well, yes, 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 it was such so and so person, but there was actually this other there was another layer to it, and that just didn't happen. It was just like, nope, it was them, and this happened, and okay, that solves the crime. And then like like with the previous seasons, there's another murder that happens at the end of the episode, and you're left with that cliffhanger, and you're like, okay, I mean, I guess I expected because that's what happens at the end of every season of the show. But I'm like, I really wanted the finale to not be about like what the next murder was going to be, but I wanted it to be like I just wanted more. I was expecting it to be a stronger, just a stronger episode, and it it wasn't as strong as it was as I thought it could have been. Now, to be fair, like since they were releasing episodes every week, and granted they do have like a previously on, and so it like kind of catches you up. But I'm like, yeah, that's great and all, but I really I I think I would have to rewatch this season because there was so much more in terms of the intricate plotting that maybe when we got to the finale, it didn't hit me as hard because like I just didn't. I don't know. Maybe I forgot some things, or maybe there's certain clues that I just didn't get because of the fact that I was in the moment watching the finale. Who knows? Um, but I do want to say the show is really great. It's fun to watch Steve Martin and Martin Short play off each other. There's like other guest stars that come in that are really fun. And like I said, I don't want to give away any like spoilers on it, but I mean the show's really great, and I really wanted to go back to the first couple seasons and just watch them. Just since they're all released, I can like watch them. Uh, you know it. I could stream all of them. I could binge them if I want to, and really kind of pick up on some of the things that maybe I missed on the first the first time around. But yeah, it's a really great show. It's a really interesting premise, and I kind of like I I think they're doing stuff with storytelling that maybe I would not accept in like the Ahsoka show, but I accept in this one, and uh, I don't know. Maybe it's because I understand the motivation of the characters more in Only Murders, um, but yeah, I don't know. So have you guys like seen the show? Do you like the show? I think it's really well done. I think there's a patient plotting to Only Murders in the Building that we don't see in other shows. But it's like I said, it's good. It's a good show. I'm looking forward to season 4. Um, like clockwork, they already announced that there's going to be a season 4, and I was like, good, because if you left us on this cliffhanger, that would really suck, and don't do that because you know if the show got canceled and we're left with this cliffhanger, it's like that would be really frustrating, and unless they the show got canceled for some reason, and then they're like, well, we're gonna do a movie just to kind of fill in all the blanks of like what we wanted to do but we couldn't do because of the fact that the show got canceled. But I mean, since it's Martin Short and Steve Martin, I'm sure they, if they were, if the showrunners were smart, which I believe they are, they've been around for a while, that they would, you know, pretty much say, okay, we want to do a such and such amount of seasons, and yeah, we're not sure what the arcs are going to be, but it feels like this is what we want to do, is to just have it go from, a single murder that we're solving to something more intricate down the road. And I appreciate that. Like that, I think I heard that that's what, if you know the show, The Good Place, that's kind of what happened, where Mike Schur, went to pitch the show, and he was like, well, this show is a four or five season show. Like I'm not going to go beyond this. And the studios were like, the studio was like, okay, fine. If that's what you think it is, we'll greenlight you for these seasons, depending on if the first season takes off. It's like he had a plan in mind. He knew what it was he wanted to do, and he knew how many seasons it was going to take to flesh out the entire story. I can't say that for like other shows where they just kind of got forced into expanding the story, because they're like, your show's so popular, yay, now make more seasons. And they're like, we don't have more seasons. And they're like, too bad, you got to make it up, and you got you because we need to keep this audience coming back. And they're like, great, now we're gonna convolute our story because, well, the studios are throwing money at us and forcing us to make more seasons than we want to. So anyway, so I've been talking for a good hour about stuff. So for anybody who's shown up, or if you come back to to listen on the rewatch, thank you for being here. Thank you for hanging in there and listening to me talk about the things that interest me this week. So yeah, so before I go, I have to plug once again my film, Look Into the Fire. You can find it on Amazon Prime. You can find it on Tubi. You can find it on the Roku channel. Go watch it. I'm very proud of it. Leave a review. Just send an email at tentative.title.with.tim.podcast@gmail.com. Or you can, get in touch with me on Twitter at title_Tim. So yeah, just go give it a watch. Let me know what you think. The reactions to it have been kind of all over the place. Some people absolutely love the film and think it's great, think it's a phenomenal accomplishment. And then there are other people who just watch it and they're like, well, it was okay. Maybe you could have done more, or if you had more money, it could have been better. Which is like almost every film. Every independent film could use more money. And then there are some people who are just like, yeah, it's not for me, and I didn't like it, and it's like, okay, well, that's fine too. So just yeah, go watch it. Let me know what you think. So yeah, I think I'm gonna bring this stream to an end. Thank you everybody for tuning in, either live or on the rewatch. So, all right. Also, next week, I don't know if I'm gonna have a live stream. So, if you're expecting one next week, I don't know if it's gonna happen. But if it does, I'll be here I'll be here streaming. So, all right. I'll talk to you guys next week, maybe, or the week after. All right. Bye.